So, just to introduce yourself real quickly.
Sure, I belong to a movement that's a mouthful. Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, or VIPs.
Okay, Ray, what have you heard about this latest attack that caused Donald Trump to launch missiles? Have you heard anything from operations people who are on the ground there?
We have. Now, I must tell you that we have about 15 active members of VIPS. Some of them are incredibly well plugged into NSA, for example, and in this case, to the military on the scene. So we got word a day and a half ago that the attack on that, well, the attack that released these chemicals in Syria, this was not a chemical bombing or chemical missile or something like that from a Syrian aircraft. Rather, it was a targeted bombing or missile attack on what was suspected to be an arms depot in the rebel-held territories. You know, you want to get the arms depot, right? Little did the Syrians know, it was full of phosphate, full of all kinds of chemicals. Right?
And you've heard that from people on the ground?
That's correct.
Okay, and
people in the military. Now, the question is, of course, even though people at the, let's say, lieutenant captain level know that, and let's say they have the courage to report that up the line, there's no guarantee that other people who fancy themselves as mad dogs, as does the Secretary of Defense, Mad Dog Mattis, report that up to Washington. We have a guy at CENTCOM who has this kind of bloodlust for Syrians, okay? So whether that got up to the president or not, I can't say. All I can say is that everyone that I'm connected with used all the contacts that they had to make sure that the White House knew. And we are, through other channels, assured that indeed the White House did know, that the CIA played it straight, and yet Trump was persuaded by whomever to do what he did last night, and that makes it just a real, well, what's the word, kind of a flashback to really bad times in the past.
And one quick follow-up. That, what you said is consistent with the AWACS report showing there were planes that went in. Mm-hmm. So we know that that happened, right? Mm-hmm. But that knowing that the planes went in doesn't mean that the gas came from the planes. Am I making sense there? Because that's being used as a justification.
Well, that's correct, and it was proven that the sarin and the other chemicals that the Syrian army had and were accused of using in August and in the earlier months in 2013 were all surrendered, given up by Bashar al-Assad at Russian behest, really, to be destroyed on a U.S. ship especially outfitted for such destruction. Did that happen? Yeah, it happened. Was it verified? Yes, it was verified. So where's this stuff come from? And is it sarin? Well, if it's sarin, that's a little bit of a problem. Yeah. There's no indication that Syria has the capability to manufacture these weapons since 2013. As a matter of fact, they were all 20 years old anyway, okay? Now, what were these chemicals? I don't know. But, as long as you have a battle going on, as long as the rebels are in control of this part of Syria, are you going to get UN? You're going to get UN inspectors in there? Give me a break. You're not. Did you get them into Ghouta? Well, not really. They never got to first base. They came back and said, we don't know what heck happened, okay? So it's pretty crass. It's pretty, hypocritical to be accusing the Syrians of actually doing this intentionally when we know on the ground that it appears to have been a terrible mistake. Now, is there precedent for this? Yeah. I was briefing the PDB, the President's Daily Brief, in 1983. What happened? A Korean airliner, KAL-007, was shot down over Siberia. Had it violated Soviet airspace? Yes, it had. Had it followed the same trajectory as a earlier RC-135? Yes, it had. That's a spy plane. Did the Russians find it? Yeah, they saw it on their radar. Was it the middle of the night? Yeah. Did the Russian fighter bomber go up there and try to get it to land? Yeah, he did. Okay. Did he get orders to shoot it down? He did. Did he shoot it down? Yes. How many people killed? I think it was 269. furor, okay? U.S. goes to the UN. The Russians deliberately shot down a civilian aircraft. Now, these half-truths are worse than lies. Did they shoot down a civilian aircraft? Yes, they did. Deliberately? No, they didn't. They thought it was another spy plane, and we know that from the Russian intercepts. Unfortunately, the State Department video guy was only given 8 minutes of a 60-minute intercept. And so he constructed this thing where the Russians deliberately not shot down a civilian aircraft. Then, 10 years later, he writes this book, Masters of Deceit, he titles it, and he owns up to the fact that when he saw the whole transcript, he realized that this is a terrible mistake. The analogy here, of course, is Syrian Air Force making this terrible mistake, hitting a system with chemical stuff.
Well, that's great. Right? I hear you got a call. So thanks so much. Thank you.
Well, let me just finish here. What he said was this. The moral is this. He said, from all this, I really was devastated because I was used. And then he drew this moral. He said, the moral of the story is this. Every nation lies, even our own, when it suits their advantage. The trick is, whoever lies first wins. That's the moral? Well, in realpolitik, that's the moral. And we saw that at play yesterday and today and tomorrow, to the degree one puts credence into the mainstream media.
Thanks a lot, Ray. Appreciate it.